Welcome back to the channel. This is Punched. On the table, or rather on the computer in this case, is a detail of the map for Armored Knights Case Blue Don Bend by Grognard Simulations. In particular, we're looking at the main confrontation line in the tank graveyard scenario. So I'm going to refer to locations as north, south, east, and west. Obviously, north is up on the map. All right, so we just got our nice north, and we'll go with that. So first thing to notice is that off here in this area is out of bounds. Okay, and that's denoted by this this nice, convenient jagged line here. So we don't have to worry about anybody playing over there. On the eastern side, we have the Don River, and per the rules of this scenario, nobody can cross the Don River except at a bridge, ferry, or pontoon bridge, which are all located a bit to the south. So that's nice. We only have 7 hexes here along the line. So let's do a little terrain analysis. First, I would call your attention to these hexes right here. So the hexes within this red border, they are all what they call stream plus balka, as I understand it. So we have these small streams here. They are not minor rivers. They are smaller than that, but they make for what is officially defensible terrain. Every one of these hexes gives a -2 to both the attacker and the defender, and that is an advantageous shift for the defender, right? So the attacker does worse, the defender does better. So the west side has really good terrain for us, and of course you'll notice over here as well that we have additional balka, quite a bit of it over in this area, so that makes for nice fallback positions. Problem. One other thing I will say before the problem is that all of these villages, that's these hexes with little collections of buildings, right? These are all victory point locations, which is bad for the Germans. We have to protect them, right? They all provide an additional -1. Which is again, it is a good thing for the defender and not so good from the point of view of the attacker. So the buildings in these villages provide additional cover. Problem. While we are very good off to the west, very good, we suck off to the east. Okay, so everything is nice and clear. There are no advantages for the defender out here. Additionally, I would point out that the units here, the German units, are defending without combat supply. There is no combat supply. In fact, these units are actually encircled, and they are getting intermittent supply via airdrop from the Luftwaffe. So per the supply rules in this scenario, on the 1200, what is it, the 1200, 1600, and 2000 turns, so 3 turns out of 6 each day, we can activate 1 camp group. That's a headquarters, and 20 steps of units can be in combat supply on the German side. Everything else, all the time, is out of combat supply. So the motivation, in my opinion, one of the motivations behind this scenario is getting the Germans to operate units without combat supply. So I leave it as an exercise for the viewer to look them up in the rule booklet. I'll do a brief summary here. In defense, you're actually not doing too bad. All of your units are at full strength except for artillery, which is at half strength in the defense. In the attack, all of your units are at half strength. Your artillery cannot fire to attack, and your organization, your formation, only gets 1 total attacks per turn. So, further, all of your motorized and mechanized units are operating at 25% of their movement points. Okay, so anything that's in a truck, half-track, tank, they're operating at 25%. Generally speaking, that means that your movement 13 units are going to get three movement points instead. So roughly 3 hexes in most of these locations. Certainly off to the east, you know, in the wide open stuff or along a road, they're only going to get 3 hexes of movement. Your trucks, not as bad, they're going to get 5 hexes or 5 movement points, which again, along roads. Your Soviets are operating in combat supply every turn. Okay, I think technically they might not be in combat supply on the midnight turn. Per the general rules, no one is in combat supply on the midnight turn. But 5 turns out of 6, they're coming for you, and they're fully supplied and they're armed for bear. So just keep that in mind. So the critical thing is, if the Soviets break through with some of their mobile units, tanks and whatnot, or motorized units, you're not really going to be able to catch them. You're going to have to send off, detail off a camp group, and only during half the day to go off and corral them. In the meantime, they can be taking the various town and the various villages, which are all high victory point locations. So hold the line. If I were to summarize, I would say that the Soviets are Hulk smash, and the Germans are you shall not pass, and you really want to hold to that. Okay, so that's terrain analysis. Let's talk a little bit about the initial dispositions. The important points to note are that you don't actually have to be on the line as the German player. You just have to project a zone of control onto the line. So that's fairly important, and we will definitely come back to that. Let me try this. So this is my initial setup for both sides. A bit grainy, but I think acceptable for this purpose. You can see the 39th Tank Brigade is located over here. The 131st Rifle Division is down here. Yeah. 158th Tank Brigade is here with their headquarters and supply just a bit south. And then we have I'm not certain that this is current, but maybe an older photo, but we'll just go with that. We have the remainder of the 28th Tank Corps right here on the west side rather. So I can tell you that the vulnerable points are this hex and this hex. Why is that? Well, because the Soviets can mount 1, 2, they can bring up 3 hexes worth of units, and in fact you can see that they have done exactly that here in the west, and that's going to be their first turn attack. So as a consequence, on these critical hexes I put a Hedgehog 2. That'll help out a little bit. I've got hedgehogs all along the initial line, and you can see where I refused the flank over here on the east just a touch. Just going to see how that works out. Now, considering the openness of the terrain over here on the east-hand side, I think I will wind up probably moving a hedgehog and an occupying unit, probably this one over here, before I get going with the game. I may do that with 2 of these units, 2 of these hedgehogs. We'll just see how that works. So, but these are the initial dispositions, more or less. Now, to go into the details, this is a study I did. Actually, this is the aftermath of a study I did with the German units. So I first kind of shot from the hip and I said, okay, these are my German units. These are the hexes in which I plan to place them. Let me fix that up. This is the main line of resistance for the Germans. refused back 1 hex over here on the eastern side. And so I basically put the units out there, and I said, okay, this seems like it might be okay to me. And then I unstack the units. So every diagonal here is a stack of units along the line. Okay, just something to be aware of. Just like those. Okay, and I went in and I added up the factors, and I wound up making some changes. We're looking at the results of those changes here. I think the changes included, I don't know that I had an 88 here. I certainly did not have this anti-tank unit here on this flank, so I moved that over. Something to be aware of is that the infantry units here are getting, and I think the heavy weapons, no, the heavy weapons don't count. They are getting regimental integrity bonuses. Now there's not enough armor here, right? Because of the setup, we have a full panzer regiment, which is nice, but we only have 3 companies out of that panzer regiment for the 60th and then also for the 3rd motorized. As a result of which, we do not get any regimental integrity bonus for the armored units. If we had all 4 companies, I think that we would. That would give us 2 companies from each notional battalion within the regiment, though these are currently constituted as separate companies. All right, so covered terrain analysis. So the German mission is fairly simple. They have to hold the line. Don't let the Soviets pass. They can fall back. They can bend, but not break. If the Soviets get some units past them, particularly on the 2nd day, any units that they get past after the start of day interphase that start off in supply, combat supply, will remain in combat supply for the rest of that day. And so if the Soviets happen to get a unit or 2 past the Germans on the 1st day, and the Germans can close off this, I actually look forward to that, because then any units that got back into the rear area here, they would not only not be in combat supply, but they would be out of supply, and would be fairly easy to chase down, I think. So, peculiarities. We're operating under, let me switch back to another picture here. So this is the bigger picture, if you will. So what's going to be happening here is the Germans are defending. They have limited ability to counterattack by half the day they can combat supply 1 camp group. So that may be necessary to counterattack. Let's see, they don't want to let the Soviets pass and so on. They want to use terrain and hedgehogs to their benefit. Once you get past the initial line of hedgehogs here, it's going to be a bit difficult because presumably the Soviets will have moved up in proximity to the entire front line in the first couple of turns here. And so you can't actually start construction of a hedgehog when you, I think, not too sure on that. I think you might do a hedgehog, but I don't think you can do a hedgehog 2. Have to go back to the rules on that. But in any event, I think you would have to be pulling units off the line, which leaves you vulnerable. Now, in the midnight turn, you've got some opportunity there, but you have to start off with units, and they must be stationary for the entire turn in order to produce a hedgehog. So, just something to consider. Soviet advantages. They're in continuous combat supply. There's a great initial correlation of forces, let's see, they have mobility, continuous combat supply, a good initial correlation of forces, and an almost fanatical devotion to the Pope. Sorry, that would be the Spanish Inquisition, but you kind of get what I mean here. Let's say Stalin in this particular case. So for the Germans, their advantages are they have veteran experience. All of the Soviet formations are green. Okay, so that will actually have a very good effect on the combat results tables. Also, the Germans are defending instead of attacking, and particularly at the lower odds ratios, there is considerable advantage. If you can get the Soviets down to 1 to 1 or 1.5 to 1, 2 to 1 at the worst, you're still doing fairly well in terms of the casualties that you're inflicting. So that's it. Right. Note that every Soviet tank brigade, so those are here, and here, and here, they all are able to stack in one hex. Remember, this is Armored Knights Case Blue. It's not Armored Knights Guderian crosses the Meuse. So the hexes are 2.5 kilograms apart. And the stacking limits have doubled from 6 stacking points up to 12. And it turns out that you can get everything into one hex. You can get most of the combat capabilities of the 32nd Motor Rifle Brigade in one hex as well. So what that also means is these guys are getting regimental integrity. Regimental integrity applies not only to regiments but also to brigades. And so they're going to be taking full advantage of it. Oh, and here is another brigade with all their combat forces in one location. Now, deficiency. The Germans do have a full division's worth of artillery. My interpretation is that with the Kampfverband Schlammer rule that is in effect, that artillery can fire defensively for any units. One of the artillery units is from one division, 2 other artillery units are from another division, but we can defend. If we can defend without penalty, then I believe that we can also fire artillery outside of the normal rules as well. Would like your take in the comments below. And I'll be following up at some point with Chris and Robert, the game designers, to get their take on it as well. I think that's worthy of clarification. The general rule does not allow that, but I believe it is appropriate for the KB Schlammer. All right, so that is pretty much it. I did count up stacking factors on the units. I may come back with another segment on that, but it's not all that critical. I will point out that I actually put the numbers on a post-it note for all of those units that were stacked up. Control-Z. So when I was talking about this exercise where I unstacked the units and then moved a few here and there, I may continue to move a few. This is a particularly vulnerable hex, and I think maybe the 88s might be more welcome over there. And this hex can only be targeted from one adjacent hex, so I think it's okay to be a little weaker there. So I may move those 88s over as well. But in any event, I found it to be a useful exercise that once I had done my off-the-cuff, off the top of my head placement of units, it's like, okay, that looks pretty good. It looks okay to me. I went through and I counted things up and realized that I didn't, I was strong in some areas, particularly I was fairly strong in the area of these regiments because they had the regimental integrity bonus, and I realized that I was noticeably weaker in other locations. So I did do a rearrangement. It was not a horrible rearrangement. The other thing that I noticed was that I tended, because of the way that the scenario card is worked up, I tended to put the 60th motorized units on the west and the 3rd motorized units on the east. And we're not playing that way. So I may go back and mix this up a little bit, and unfortunately these guys, these infantry units here, they do have to remain adjacent to one another to get the defensive regimental integrity bonus. So we'll just see how that works out. So I'm all set. In other pictures that I'm not going to show at this point in time, I have set up the airfield charts and set the Soviet air and the German air on the closest available airfields. The Germans are in level 2 airfields, and the Soviets are in level 1. I'm not planning on doing any air attacks on opposing airfields. I'm just going to keep it simple for now. I think the troops in the field need all of the air support that they can get, and so I'm not going to bother with that. Also, the supply situation for both sides is relatively simplified, so there is no capability of doing any repairs to the airfields, so I don't think it's all that germane to try and attack the airfields when you can't repair them. So I don't think that's an oversight. I think that's intentional, but it's just not stated. All right. So that's it. We have Soviet Hulk smash, Red Hulk, I suppose, from the latest movie, versus You Shall Not Pass, and we'll see whether the Hulk or Gandalf is gonna get things done. You know. That's all I have to say about that. I hope you liked the video. Hit the like button, of course. Look forward to your subscriptions. I will keep these coming. I will point out that this particular video is delayed by a day. We had bad thunderstorms in the area and took a power hit late in the day that didn't get resolved until after midnight. But resolved it finally was. All right. Like, subscribe as you will, and thank you for watching, and we'll see you down the road.